Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're going to get started here. There's just a couple more people to filter in, and then we'll get started with what's actually the second Hack Michiana event. There was one back in 2013. So we'll give folks a second to find their spots. Who was at last year's event? Anybody? A couple? Yeah, there were tons of new faces and names that came through, and that's extremely exciting for us. So thank you to all of you. Civic hacking is a term that I think some folks get maybe concerned about, the hacking part. So we're hoping to demystify the hacking part today. It's really, think of it more as tinkering. We've got our friend in Chicago, Chris Whitaker, who's part of the Code for America Brigade there, who will be talking about some of the very cool things that are going on in Chicago. And then we'll be spending more time talking about cool things that are happening in South Bend and will continue to happen because of your participation here today. But without further delay, I wanted to stick to the agenda because we have some folks that have some pretty specific time boxes to get off and address some other activities in the city. So I do want to introduce the Deputy Mayor, Neal. Of course, our mayor is serving the country right now, which is cool. When a politician says he's going to serve, and they call him up and he goes and serves, I think that's extremely cool. And so with that, I want to introduce Neal.
Thank you, Dan. Welcome, everybody. It is a great Saturday to be here in South Bend for Hack Michiana. I want to thank Dan and Josh Wells from IU for being co-sponsors here with the City of South Bend and all of our great in-focus analysts and just data people who come today to, I think, share some of their excitement and knowledge with all of us, and I know some of the knowledge and excitement with all of you. The effort this morning is one of, with the partnership also with Code for America. The city's been part of Code for America for a couple of years now. We had some fellows in 2013 that helped us create some apps. Hopefully you've seen some of those. City Voice was a big one, in which we're able to capture the information, feedback from residents about various things going on in the city and try to bring that together to help inform us as we look to plan for the future of the city of South Bend. So just want to make a couple quick thoughts about open data and hopefully from my perspective, what I hope is going to accomplish today. First, Mayor Pete has talked about community's capacity and what are we doing to come together to make something that some of the parts are greater than the whole. And part of that is just us looking at the information the city's been holding on to for a long time. We try to share it. You can usually about 2 or 3 times a year open up the South Bend Tribune and there'll be a whole page of numbers or something that's there. And it was meant to inform. And for 100 years, that was how you informed the public of what was going on. We now, over the last 30 years, have created other tools. Clearly, you're all very familiar with many of them. But the idea is that we, the city, have information that we want to share, that we have to share. And what a great way to come together to create community's capacity. Say, let's take this data, which we have put out on our website as part of our open data portal, in which you can begin accessing some of the information of the city, hopefully putting it together with other information, and see what's going on and help inform us and help us make better decisions. So I won't take up much more time other than to say that really excited to be here this morning. Great to see you all. Look forward to some of the things that we can create, bringing together some of the information of the city of South Bend with people who have some knowledge of that. Your ideas and thoughts on how we can look at that data and maybe create some really interesting insights as to how we can make this a better community and truly, I say oftentimes, exploiting one another in a very positive way to create this additional capacity to make this a better community. So thank you very much for being here. I know we're going to have a lot of fun, and I hope we walk out today with a strong sense of both some of the data that the city has that we would love to share and that you will continue to exploit for future good. Thanks very much. Dave.
Thank you, Mark. I shirked some of my MC duties because I didn't actually properly recognize some of the sponsors that are helping make this event happen. So I will see if I can get that all right. So Code for America, they had the fellows that were here, and part of what Code for America wants to do when the fellows leave is leave in place a community that carries on the work of civic hacking and open data. Code for America not only provides a lot of support organizationally, but also financial support for this event. So CRADA provided financial support. They wanted to also have one of their analysts here. Logistically, that just wasn't able to happen. So CRADA, the city of South Bend, the SB Stat team has spent countless hours, and I've seen tons of emails and collaborated with them. IUSB Center for Sustainable Future is also a sponsor. The branch co-working space, Indiana University gave us this and all the computer labs and all the technology to use at no charge. And Connect Health is also a sponsor of this event. So thank you to all those sponsors, because without them we wouldn't be doing this event today. And if you were here earlier when we had the slide deck rolling, your names were on there, because we wouldn't be doing this without you either. There would just be a couple people sitting around going, wouldn't it be cool if we could? And so we're going to help fill in the blank of what it would be cool if we could do here today. With that, I wanted to, I invited Chris Whitaker. He is with Code for America. He's a brigade captain and is responsible for coordinating all of the Midwest brigade captains. And I thought it would be helpful if he could share some of the very cool things that have been happening in the Chicago area. So are you able to hear everything okay, Chris?
Yes, good morning.
Excellent. I will show you the room if that is helpful.
Hi, Michiana.
Just like you here.
So my name is Christopher Whitaker. I'm the Code for America Brigade Captain from Chicago, and I'm also the Midwest coordinator for the Code for America Brigade in the Midwest. I wanted to thank Dan for inviting me to speak about some of the stuff that we've been doing in Chicago and sort of show you some examples of the work we've done. So let me share my screen. All right. So I always start off with this one. We've been at this a few years, and I always like to show like what would look like when we first got started. When we first got started, it was dots on a map. So this is Derek Eater's vacant and abandoned building finder. They were basically pulling all the 311 data on all the abandoned buildings in Chicago and essentially just putting dots on a map. And when we first did this, this was like the coolest thing ever, because we hadn't been able to display the data like this because it just wasn't available. So once we got this going, we started putting everything on a map. This app actually is, if you go to Derek Eater's website, he has this as a map template, so anybody can go in and sort of fork it to essentially put any kind of data in a searchable map template. So this was all well and good. Some other early ones is wasmycartowed.com. So the city had put out a data set on all the cars that got towed in Chicago. And as you can see on the data portal, it is a giant spreadsheet in the sky. It's kind of inside baseball. You kind of have to know about it before you can actually get to the site. It's not really that searchable. So what a guy named Scott Robin did was he created a very simple website, wasmycartowed.com. And all it is one sentence. It's my car with license plate, blah, 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 was parked in Chicago and now I can't find it. Was it towed or relocated? Yes. Your car was towed to this address on this date. Call this number to get it back. This is civic hacking in a nutshell. It's taking sort of open government data and it's using it to either solve a civic problem or educate about an issue. So as sort of time progressed, we started working longer and longer on projects, started finding some more resources to throw at it, and now we've been able to do some pretty interesting things. So if you're in Chicago and you eat somewhere and you get sick, first, sorry. Second, if you tweet about it, there's an app called Foodborne Chicago that will actually listen for your tweet. So here we see this person saying, having food poisoning is like going through an exorcism. This app analyzes every tweet that goes through Chicago and figures out if you're talking about a report on food poisoning or if you're an actual case of food poisoning. So it'll tweet you back saying, "Hey, sorry to hear, Chicago Health Department can help," and it'll give you this link. When you click the link, it's going to take you to this site and it presents you with a web form. So, you give information, what's at Pete's Fish Shack, here's the address, here's what I ate, here's what happened, when did it happen, given some contact information. And then when you submit your report, the information actually goes into Chicago's Open 311 system. It then gets routed to the department that handles food inspections and restaurant inspections, and they will actually deploy a food inspector to that restaurant to make sure that it's not the restaurant's fault you got sick. It's so far we've gotten almost 200 different reports of food poisoning just based on this one app. Another something that I think is really exciting is a site called largelots.org. So Chicago has a program where you can purchase a lot for $1 if you're an adjacent or if you're on the same block. The city actually owns a lot of vacant land, a lot of vacant buildings, and it would really like to get rid of these vacant buildings and have someone buy it who's actually going to use it. So what they did was they worked with the community organization, the civic startup in Chicago called DataMade, and the city of Chicago all worked together to create this large lot site. So you go to apply, you can search for a vacant building or a vacant lot near where in the area that they're talking about. And when you click on a map, it's going to give you all the information about that lot. But then it goes a little bit further. It will actually give you step-by-step instructions on how to apply for that lot. So it's going to give you you need to know the PIN, you need to tell us how you're going to use the lot, you've got to provide proof of ownership, it's going to give you directions on how to do that, it's going to help you upload your deed, your contact information, and explain all the eligibility for it. So when the city did this last year, it didn't get a lot of applications, maybe like 24 or so. Through the Large Lots program, they got 414 applications over a 4-week period, which is an incredible amount of properties that are going to get off the city's rolls and into the hands of residents. This only works because you had everybody working together. You had the community organizations, you had the technologists working on the site to make sure the site worked well, you had to have the open data on the parcels in order to make the site work. So everything's sort of coming together to create something very innovative and something that helps residents. So the last site I want to show you is a site that is not fancy. It doesn't actually use any open data. It's built on Twitter Bootstrap. It's very simple, but it helps to solve a very important problem, and it sort of highlights the community as a capacity aspect of this. So in Illinois, the way the law works is that if you were arrested as a juvenile, you then get a criminal record, regardless of if you're found guilty or not or anything like that. So these stay in your record. Even if they're eligible for expungement, right now they just stay there. And then later on when you go to try to get a job, they do the background check and lo and behold, you have a record, you don't get the job. This is a big issue. The vast majority of people who are eligible for expungement don't actually utilize it. And so last year, Smart Chicago Collaborative, which is a nonprofit organization in Chicago that sort of acts as a center of gravity for technology and civic life, worked together with a youth nonprofit called MICVA Challenge. And they ran a program called Civic Summer where they were challenged to come up with ideas for civic apps. The juvenile justice group came up with an idea to build an app to help people with expunging their records. So we hooked them up with the developer named Kathy Ding, and working with the nonprofit, they developed the expunge.io website. As you can see, it's pretty simple, and it starts with the quiz. It's a quiz. You've probably taken the quiz on BuzzFeed a million times. So I'm going to go through this real quick. You know, I saw a judge, wasn't thrown out, wasn't tried as an adult, got supervision, finished it. I am much older than 18, don't have anything else open, and look, based on my answers, I'm eligible to apply for juvenile expungement in Illinois under subsection 1. So then it gives me this form. And it's the same kind of web form that we've seen 1,000 different times. But the thing is that when I fill out this form, it's going to send an email to Legal Aid Foundation Chicago. One of the things that Legal Aid Foundation Chicago does is they help expunge juvenile records. So we're through this app, juveniles now, or people with a juvenile record, can not only get information on if they're eligible to expunge their record, but they will automatically get forwarded to the people who can help them fix the problem. The magic of this app is not necessarily the technology. It's a simple technology. It doesn't actually use open data. The magic of this app is the community connections between the youth organization, the technologist, and the Legal Aid Foundation that makes the app work. Without the community organizing element or the community connection element, this app does nothing. So I always like to point that out because it's not just about sort of the code and the data. A lot of this is community organizing, and it's sort of very important for the work that we do. On a lot of the apps that we try to build, we always try to partner up with either a government agency, a nonprofit organization, or a community activist, because admittedly, we're a geeky bunch. But if we're geeks making things for geeks, we're not always solving the problem. So when we build stuff to address the needs and challenges of those in the trenches that are working to solve the problem, we end up making much better apps. So that's my spiel. Again, my name's Christopher Whitaker. You can find me on Twitter at Civic Whitaker. And Dan, I don't know how much time I may have gone over, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions if we have time.
Cool. I wasn't watching the clock terribly closely. I think you were about right on the time box. Are you able to hang around till about 9:45? We were going to maybe batch up questions and have all our panelists answer them when they came up at that point. Are you good to hang around for a little bit?
Yeah.
Cool. We tried to get Chris to join us live and in person, but he will be at another civic hacking event. I forget which one. So he wasn't able to make the trek. We offered a couch, and it was a really compelling offer. I don't know why he couldn't make it. That's okay. Thank you. And I think you highlighted an important point I wanted to amplify, which is civic hacking isn't just technology folks. Because when it's technology for its own sake, it's fairly useless. But it's folks who are in the community, it's people who are good at marketing, people who are good at designing, people who maybe would be affected by the technology. So you need to actually check with your end users and not build things and inflict them on other people. We're going to do just a little audible of the program. We're going to have Beth Harsh talk next about teaching children to program computers. We're going to, this is a Firefox browser.
Thank you.
We're going to switch over to Prezi. So Beth Harsh is next.
Thank you, Dan. I am a part of Hack Michiana. Some of you may know me that way. But I'm here today as a parent and as an advocate for building community. That's what I'm here to talk about today. You might be surprised to hear that the idea for Code for Kids started around the dinner table. But I think that's where all good ideas start, isn't it? Like around food, maybe some drinks. But we were having dinner as a family, and my young son was showing interest in computer science, a great deal of interest in it. And it dawned on me that the school that he goes to, and it is an awesome South Bend school, but at his grade level, it doesn't offer computer science yet. Now, on a good note, they're thinking about it and I'll tell you a little more about that. But it is an awesome school, but they didn't offer it yet.
Ignore the man behind the curtain first.
Awesome. You're going to do that for me so I don't have to think about
it. Sure. Yeah.
So I've got this computer science idea in my head, and I want to help my 5th grade. So I'm thinking, what can we do? So we discuss it, and we start reading some statistics, and the statistics are just overwhelming, and we will get to those in just a moment. You can leave it there. And as we read the statistics, I thought, I've got to do something, right? I'm a capable person. I can figure something out. So as a family, we talked about it, and we thought, let's talk to the principal at the school and see if we can at least start an after-school program. So earlier this year, we started an after-school program at his school. The principal was like, absolutely, let's do it. So we started that, and then that got us thinking. We used the materials from code.org. You may be familiar with them. And we thought, we can do more. So I started talking to some friends of mine, like I'll point a few people out here, like Rob and Grant. Who else is in here that helped out? Started saying, hey, what can we do? And kind of Code for Kids was born, if you will. So let's take a look at the statistics a little bit. Code.org says that only 1 in 10 schools teach children to code. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that doesn't seem like enough. Can you fix that?
I'll see what I can do.
Thank you. If school-age children in our community want to learn to code, if you're not going to one of the few schools that does offer it, then it's kind of up to them to take the initiative to figure out how to do it. And that is unfortunate. And recent evidence suggests, as you read the second statistic about computer programming jobs are growing at twice the national average, and we have less than 2.4% of college students graduating with degrees in computer science, that's just kind of ludicrous. Is it just me? It just feels ludicrous. We have jobs that people could be filling if we had the people to fill them. So, and what the other thing Code.org is saying is that we're going to have a serious economic problem in the near future if we don't fill those jobs. And it's not just Code.org. It is also the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They estimate that by 2020, we will create 1.4 million jobs in computer science. Yet we can only fill 30% of those jobs. Wouldn't it be awesome if we had those jobs right here, right? That's what we need to do. We need jobs. So some of you may have heard of this guy named Steve Jobs. I don't know if you have, but if so, this will probably make more sense. But he basically says that everyone should learn a computer language because it teaches you how to think. And I'm not sure if this quote is exactly right, but I found it on the internet, so I'm pretty sure it's right. Right? But it makes sense, and that's what we saw as we were doing the after-school program this year. We saw how it was clicking as they were working through logic, right? They're working through logic problems on the computer. And it was making sense. It was clicking for them. It was really exciting. So Code for Kids mission is pretty simple, and to be honest, it's a brand new sort of concept for us, so it could actually change. But we just want to encourage our youth to learn computer science, and we want to do that with an emphasis on computer programming. And so, as you've heard, we've started some after school. We would love to be in school, so there's some need to get into schools more. And then we did start, thanks to Grant and Rob and a few others, we did start summer camps. And it was just a short camp, but it was very successful. We had 30-some kids in the first one, about 20 in the second one. And we're just trying to inspire them. We're just trying to like raise awareness so that they know there's something else, right? When I was growing up, it was a small town. Boy, I thought you were either a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, a fireman, or a policeman. I was pretty sure that was all the jobs there were. So, it's true, it's a true story. So, you know, we just want to expose them to something else. And something that's going to pay well, right? We've got some developers in here. You know it's not, you know, it pays pretty well. So let's get them interested. So then you think, well, what can I do to help, right? Well, we need all kinds of people. We need educators and parents. We need coders. We need people that are really good at organizing things and project manager types. We need advocates. We need marketers. So I don't see anyone in the room that doesn't fit that bill. So really, I think you can all get involved. So I'll talk to y'all later, and we'll get you involved. But what are we doing? Well, we want to build more curriculum. We want to have some really good out-based summer camps that target different levels, because some kids are going to come in with a little bit of knowledge, some kids are going to come in with no knowledge, some kids are going to come in with great knowledge. But if your interest is like, my son is obsessed with Minecraft. If I had a camp where he learned how to build mods for Minecraft, he'd be there, right? He's also obsessed with video games. One of the things he thinks he might want to do is become a video game designer. If we had a game that taught you how to build video games, that camp taught that, the kids would be excited to come. So there's a lot of different curricula to build. We want to advocate to local school boards. We want computer science starting earlier in the South Bend schools. And we want it starting earlier in Mishawaka schools, and really all the schools in the Michiana region. I'm not going to exclude anyone. We need help getting the word out. We need help organizing. There's just so many things you could do that if you're even the least bit interested, I beg you to come talk to me later. I would really like to hear from you, even if you choose to work on something else today. That is all I have. I hope that makes sense. I just feel like this makes sense for our community. Let's educate our youth in a way that will really benefit them. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate that. Ignore the man behind the curtain for a second as we get back to, I think, the right place here. See if I can stop my screen share. Chris, is the screen share stopped at this point?
Yes, it is.
I think that might have been a yes.
Yeah, I was lamenting the other day when I learned to program, you wrote 10, you know, and some words, and you wrote 20 and some words. It was super easy to start. It was, you know, whatever. It's harder now, and it can be overwhelming, and so making learning approachable and interesting for children, they're not starting with BASIC or Pascal or something like I did. And computer science it's a wonderful place. It teaches you how to think, and it does lead to pretty solid income. So if we can get more kids doing that, I think that'd be fantastic. If you'll beg my indulgences, I think I want to continue with the chief, and no, we're okay. I want to check with you, okay, because I'm worried you have a hard stop. Okay, we will then continue with our original plan, which is Shubhita. Shubhita Kamble, the Director of Code Enforcement in South Bend, and Brett Harris with the Human Rights Commission. Is this a fair presentation? Do you have a PowerPoint I can put up? Okay, that's great.
Doing great.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. How is everybody today? Happy Saturday. I'm thrilled to be here today to talk with you about code enforcement and how we use data to inform the work that we do. As you know, data is not about numbers, it's about people. When you look at the heat maps on the open data portal later today, you are getting a window into the lives of our residents and our code enforcement processes. We hope to build up our more deteriorated neighborhoods and truly our neighbor-to-neighbor networks, not just with demolition, but with folks like you folks who are willing to do the hard work of building up our neighborhood fabric. Each of us has the ability to contribute, whether it's through exceptional days like today, participation in neighborhood meetings, or through the Good Samaritan Law, which guides residents who want to help address vacant properties. Code enforcement is charged with maintaining the cleanliness and safety of our neighborhoods, particularly for the city's most vulnerable residents. We help support market values and remove blighting influences such as vacant houses that attract criminal activity. In order to forward the vision of a cleaner, safer city, our team of inspectors cite environmental, housing, zoning, and animal control-related violations. We address a series of issues ranging from tall grass to unsafe buildings, to illegal trash dumping, and finally animal bite and neglect cases. We also enforce chicken and bees ordinances. We have 10 inspectors and 4 animal control officers who monitor and document violations across the city. In addition, we also have public hearings overseen by an independent hearing authority every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. I encourage you to attend, especially if there are properties of interest in your neighborhoods. In addition to ordinance enforcement, our department also has an adoption center for rehoming pets. Many people don't know that we have an animal shelter. Each of you should get a dog or cat for your loved ones first thing on Monday morning. See, it's not even 10 a.m. on a Saturday, and I believe we're already moving the needle on our key performance indicators for code enforcement. So when we see our adoption data for July, it will peak this month, and we'll be able to say that was because of Hack Michiana. Like I said, data and trends are all about people, and in some cases pets too. Given that we're talking about the animal shelter, how many of you know what a python is? Show of hands. Okay. How many of you can program using Python? Anybody? Ooh, that is awesome! Okay, I'm not a techie, and Python is the code that's used to create some beautiful infographics. I have to admit that I would love a good infographic team and dream about a day when we'll be able to produce them in code enforcement. So, are any volunteers? If your level of interest in volunteering is high, but like me, you don't have a computer programming background, don't worry, we can still use your help. We've got plenty to do. And you can absolutely come to see me afterwards. We could use some help with going paperless. If you saw the Department of Code Enforcement, you would know that there should be a drum roll every time I say going paperless. Right now, our data is heavily siloed in thousands of paper folders, multiple Excel spreadsheets, some of which have been migrated to SharePoint, thanks to Santi and his team. And our, woo, yeah, round of applause, as we said. And we also have information in our main ERP, an antiquated case management system called Naviline. This makes collecting information on our key performance indicators, which reflect our operational health and progress against our goals, pretty challenging. However, we have been working to ensure that we have appropriate processes and tools in place to get accurate, clear data out. The first step is identifying key performance indicators, KPIs, that are appropriate, such as the percent of cited housing and environmental issues cleaned up by the owner, that's our compliance rate, the percent of billed debt collected by the department, the number of new houses on the vacant and abandoned list. We think that these are good measures, not just of productivity or busyness, but the effectiveness of our department. To get good KPIs, we need good numbers and ultimately good data collection processes. We're doing this heavy lifting of 1, establishing operational processes, and 2, upgrading our IT infrastructure with the incredible help of the SB Stat team, like Santi and Renee, who are here today. By working with the exceptional team of SB Stat individuals and focus fellows and city staff across departments, we're able to audit and sort information, including the paper data that our inspectors generate related to the 1,000 houses in the 1,000 days effort that Ms. Meredith will discuss later. With the help of SB staff, we are also able to queue up data for scanning to go paperless. We are helping to facilitate the flow of violation information from the field into the office with the purchase of iPads and the creation of a new mobile application. And currently, we have multiple people keying in data and researching ownership information for violation letters, which are generated at a rate of about a few hundred letters per day. In the future, rather than having an inspector working with a pen and paper form in the field, and possibly even a napkin, and then having our secretaries go through up to 22 screens of data input to fill out one boilerplate letter. This information will flow automatically from the field to the office and generate hundreds of letters with just a few mouse clicks. So we're very excited for that. A new case management software called Isella will also help us improve our accuracy and the transparency of data by standardizing our violation input, consolidating information in one place, and making use of a dynamic GIS mapping for route optimization of our inspectors. This will help us allow us to streamline our work, make accurate data for accessible, for easy access to staff across the city, and ultimately residents who are online. One way to access our information is through the Open Data Portal, which we'll be learning about today. Santi and Renee will be showing you this in greater detail. The Open Data Portal has information on multiple departments, including code enforcement. You'll see geographically specific information on code violations arranged by issue and neighborhood. If you're interested in looking up data that's property specific on environmental violations or housing violations, you can do that. It's also possible to assess macro trends across the neighborhood and city as well. We also have Southland Animal Care and Control information on the Open Data Portal. This information ranges from the number of adoptions to transfers to rescue and fight cases as well. Finally, we also have vacant property information on an interactive site called southbendvoices.com, where we worked with Code for America Fellows to create a tool to collect community feedback on vacant properties, including affirmed demolitions. And before we wrap, since I'm getting the feeling that this could be Code's Data Christmas, I do have a request. Has anybody been digging into the code enforcement data and potentially determining associations with police and fire information? Is that something that anybody has been doing? If so, if you ever end up doing that, I would like to see it. You know, the bottom line is that we're very interested in understanding how departmental data across different departments might be, essentially connected so that we can have early warning indicators or a justification for preventative action. Ultimately, we all prioritize responsible prevention first and foremost so that we can be ahead of the curve and keep our community members safe and healthy. Thank you very much for your time today. It's exciting to be here, and I appreciate your interest in our work.
Thank you, Shubhra. I have the pleasure of doing a little bit of work with the city and met Shubhra. I saw those file cabinets she was talking about. They're quite impressive. And Fred Harris with the Human Rights Commission.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's a great day here in the city of South Bend. And I want to thank Mr. Newman and all those involved in having me here to talk to you about the Human Rights Commission and what we do and try to elaborate on how we help people in the city of South Bend. One of the key points that we need to understand about the Human Rights Commission, we are a neutral agency. We're an agency with the city government. We're not on nobody's side. We talk about the complainant and the respondent. We're a neutral agency. And what we rather do, we rather be proactive in trying to stop discrimination within the city of South Bend. And to stop that discrimination, you need to learn about the fair housing law and what the fair housing law states. Fair housing law states that you can't discriminate against anyone because of their race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, familial status. If familial status has the presence of children under the age of 18, because of your sexual orientation. These are items that we have here in the city of South Bend that we try to be proactive and talk to people about. I personally come out and do trainings to different organizations, different groups, and to elaborate what the fair housing law is all about. Fortunately, and on a good point, the city of South Bend has an area where we have a lot of diversity within the city of South Bend, where people can live wherever they want to. And having that ability to do that, it makes it easier. One of the key points that I want to definitely talk about in the Fair Housing Act, everybody thinks that when you're dealing with the Fair Housing Act, you're always talking about race. And one of the key factors that I have learned over the years of me doing this, it's not necessarily a race that becomes a discriminatory factor. Two of the bases of discrimination that I find mostly in investigation is sex, and basically that's women who are being charged sexually. Landlords want to basically use sex away from paying rent, and disabled people. Disabled people are people who they can't help because of their disability, but they are being targeted by landlords or corporations because they do have a disability. A perfect example of that is, say for instance, a person has a pet, and their doctor or clinical doctor says, that person needs a pet to sort of soothe them, to calm them. Well, what happens when that landlord says, I don't want no pets in my building or my house? Well, right there, he has violated the Fair Housing Act in dealing with a pet situation. And that's just a small, minute point of where we want to go with disseminating information to people. These are things that people need to learn about. People need to understand about fair housing. It's more than just fair housing. And going with that, this also includes insurance investigation. It also includes banking and finance. Those areas also are under the fair housing law, which we do investigate. I'm not a long-winded person, but I will tell you that the South Carolina Human Rights Commission is constantly trying to train people and give people knowledge about fair housing law. And if there's ever a question or anything that you need to know, feel free to call the South Carolina Human Rights Commission, and I or one of the other investigators will try to assist you in learning about fair housing law. Like I say, I'm not a long-winded person, but when I do a complete training, I want to make sure that you understand what fair housing law is all about. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Fred. As you were talking, it occurred to me that's yet another opportunity for maybe folks who are less technical than others. Getting into data and mashing it up can be pretty sophisticated from a software standpoint. But the design of video is something to educate, inform about those issues. That's a place where people who might be here going, well, I'm not real technical, what can I do? That's yet another opportunity to plug in and really contribute to civic hacking. Chicago has a really cool example of that too, about the transportation future, and it's kind of like a Prezi style, but it's recorded, it has some nice graphics and design to it. It's pretty compelling to watch. So thank you to Shubhita and to Fred for sharing. Last but not least, Police Chief Ron Teachman and Santi Garces are going to be sharing some things. I think, okay, I got it backwards. Santi's going to start.
Well, good morning, everybody. So, I wanted to provide a little bit of context that we're talking about keeping our community clean. So, particularly in certain neighborhoods, and neighborhoods that Shubhita described that have challenges in terms of the infrastructure being run down, some of the housing challenges, high concentration of vacant and abandoned properties, you end up also having large amounts of environmental violations that occur on the property side, not necessarily on the house, but on the surrounding property. Illegal dumpings, people that go and dump trash in the alleyways or in the front yard because they know that no one's taking care of the property. There's tall grass and tall weeds. And I think that what's important about that from a public safety standpoint as well, and this is where I want to pitch in the great information that Chief Teachman is going to share with us, but that creates a condition where people perceive that the neighborhood's run down, they're more likely to commit crimes in the neighborhood because they don't feel that anyone's looking and watching and taking care. If no one even cared about someone dumping a lot of trash in the backyard, are they going to care and they're going to call the police when there's a stabbing, when there's a robbery? So that challenge from the standpoint of the open data portal, we every day upload the new violations that occur across the city in the open data portal. So if people wanted to engage through the Good Samaritan law and through some of these opportunities to maintain the vacant properties, to maintain the vacant lots, we probably would have impact that goes beyond just the Department of Code Enforcement and just those violations, and be able to impact public safety and be able to impact the quality of life, just taking care of our communities and of our neighborhoods. So hopefully throughout the day when you're learning about the open data portal and when you're exploring all of the different tools that we want to share with you, you get a sense of purpose and the great challenge that the city faces dealing with like 17,000 environmental cases every year between people that don't take care of the sidewalk that's covered with snow and ice, not mowing the lawns, 14,000 cases every year of people that just don't cut their grass, and it comes at the city's huge expense of deploying all sorts of resources to try to abate those violations. So hopefully you feel inspired and help us connect people that might want to help their community with the information that's available to them to drive the type of outcomes that hopefully Chief Teachman will enlighten us a little bit more about.
Forget about these.
Yeah, so if you go to the city's website, southbendian.gov/VAP, that's the Vacant and Abandoned Properties website, and you can find a digital copy of this handout. And in the handout, it explains to you that according to the Good Samaritan law, which is a recent law that passed in Indiana, you're allowed to, and again, if you have questions about the nuances, I would encourage you to reach the Department of Code Enforcement or the legal department at the city. But just based on what the brochure says and what the law says, you're allowed to take care of some environmental violations that occur in the properties that are vacant and abandoned with some restrictions. So again, go and check on the restrictions, but you're allowed to mow the grass, you're allowed to pick up trash, and particularly also when there's trash dumpings in the alleyways, and those alleyways are public right of way, you have the ability to go and take care of this. So, anyways, back on.
I think some websites were mentioned. We'll make sure to get those websites shared as well. So, Police Chief Ron Teachman.
Good morning. I see from the schedule we're already supposed to be at the Q&A session. So I'll try to be brief, and that's a challenge for me. Forgive me if my head is not square on right now. Dinner was indicating I've got a hard exit. We had a house fire this morning, 2 people deceased, suspicious circumstances. So I'm there and here at the same time. I also, before I address why I'm here regarding clean communities, I have to go back to something that was brought up earlier from our friend in Chicago when he was talking about if you get sick, what do you do? And I was really fascinated by that app. Yeah. Think about this. I'll get political for a minute. Bear with me. If we all got sick here this morning, or at least several of us did, and we ended up at Memorial of St. Joe Medical, they might trace it back to the bananas or the apples in the back of the room. They would find, no, seriously, the CDC would come in, and they would find something in common that we all shared that caused us to all have a problem. Similarly, if we leave this building, we go on to Michiana, and there's an accident. 2 vehicles involved, one abandoned, the other one with injuries. I could go to the rear of that vehicle, run the license plate, and I'll try to talk about LPRs I'm trying to convince this morning, and indicate who the owner is, last known registered. If the vehicle has a legally attached false and fictitious plate, no problem. Open the door, look at the panel. There's a 17-digit vehicle identification number. And there's also a number on the dashboard where the windshield meets the engine plate.
And that number should coincide with the one on the door. If somebody was smart enough to move both of those, there are 5 or 6 hidden in the vehicle where I know where to look. And I can go to a computer database and I can determine who the last registered owner of that vehicle is. I can, in fact, trace every registered owner of that vehicle. I can go back and tell you what plant it was manufactured in Detroit, or North Carolina, or Ohio, or the port of entry if the vehicle was brought in from another country. But if I'm called for a murder scene and there's a handgun at the murder scene that was involved in that crime, we ask, where did the gun come from? And I can look at the gun and there's a serial number on it, but there is no database. There is no national registry of guns, because the gun lobbyists, the gun manufacturers will not allow that. Hack that. Gun violence is a social disease. It's something that concerns all of us, and that goes to the heart of clean communities. You might have looked at the schedule and said, okay, they're talking about vacant abandoned housing in clean communities. What is the chief of police doing up here? Oops, sorry. Let me tell you what happened in our industry some 32 years ago. A couple of criminologists, social scientists, James Q. Wilson and George Kelly, transformed our work. Because we used to always be all about crime. We never used the word disorder, it was always crime. And what Kelly and Wilson did was they wrote an article in the Atlantic Monthly, or not the Atlantic, back in March 1st, 1982. And it didn't catch fire right away, it was a slow burn. But basically, if you just go back, you can Google it and read it, it's still very contemporary. And basically, distilling this down, Reader's Digest version, what they said was this. It's called the broken windows theory. Some of you might have heard of it. If you go by a house on your street, and there's a broken window, and no one fixes that window, what'll probably happen is a few days later, some kids will throw a rock again and break another window, and another, and another. If there's a vehicle on your street that's been left there, abandoned, and no one tows it away, the tires go flat, it catches weeds, the weather just further dirties it. When people drive by, what do they say? No one here cares. And if they don't care to maintain their properties, if they don't care to fix the lot next door that's vacant or abandoned, the sense is the city has abandoned this neighborhood. And lawlessness grows. It's a very fertile environment. So that's why, thanks to Mr. Wilson and Kelly's article, we started to understand in law enforcement that the small stuff matters. What happened was a guy named Jack Maple working with, hold on a second, Bill Bratton, he was the transit chief in New York. They went after the small stuff. And for the transit, it was the guys that jumped the turnstiles. They started cracking down on that. And suddenly the subways were safer to ride. When Bratton became the chief of police above ground in New York City, they went after the squeegee man. The guys that would jump out in front of you when you stopped at the red light, right? Wash your windshield and then persuade you. Very aggressive panhandlers. Persuade you to give them money. It could have a sense of fear. Fear and disorder lead to crime. So they arrested they put an ordinance in and they arrested all the aggressive squeegee men. And the zero tolerance policies that were put into New York, many people think accounts for the fact that New York had a 50% drop in crime and a 75% drop in murders during Bratt's administration. And Bratt became the leading police figure in the country. He subsequently went to Los Angeles. They also brought in a thing called CompStat, excuse me. And CompStat gives us an indication to stop paying attention to data, but we didn't do that before. We just felt that crime happens, we react to it. We weren't proactive, and we certainly weren't intelligence-led. Now that's the buzzword in our industry, intelligence-led policing, and we're moving toward predictive policing. So police officers and code enforcement officers used to work in silos. They didn't even know each other. We wouldn't know each other's departments. Now we're joined at the hip. And in South Bend, you don't already know. Just me.
I don't know for sure. I suspect it might be.
We have a chronic nuisance or problem properties ordinance. And briefly what that is, those of you that are a little bit older remember when we didn't have burglar alarms in homes. And then that technology was invented. And it was great, except for the fact that some people had burglar alarm systems that didn't work properly and would be called to their homes all the time. And that's not fair to all of you that were called to homes with an unusually high rate. To me, it's analogous to pulling a fire alarm, sending the police when they're not required. You go to jail and pull a fire alarm. But if a police officer goes to your house repeatedly because your burglar alarm's not working, that was considered okay. We finally get ordinances put in. It's probably not a city in this country that doesn't have an ordinance that now says you get maybe 3 free, and then after the 4th one you stop paying. Right? We adjusted to the technology. Similarly, we're finding that there are many properties in South Bend that have code violations or repeat nuisance calls, not legitimate police calls when someone is a criminal victim, but the loud parties, the noise, the loud radios, the yelling doesn't result in a crime. We're going back repeatedly to those properties. Many of them are multi-family housing. And because of this ordinance that went into effect last October, we started counting them. And just like the burglar alarms, when you reach so many, 5 and 60 days, for example, we send you a bill. We send you letters, we warn you, we try to have a relationship with you as the homeowner or the landowner to remediate the property, to stop the nuisance calls, and after that we start sending you a bill, $250 each time. We've seen problem properties in this city sold, thank you, to responsible owners that are locally owned with local management companies, and it's making a huge difference. I'm going to quickly go through just 4 areas of technology that we've employed to show that we are not technologically savvy, but open to technological improvements. Let's go quickly to the 34th. You just type in 34th, think it works.
Ah, guess what I learned today? This is not it, is it? I think I'm in the middle of a build. I'll just do this one. Okay, sorry. That's what I'm going behind the curtain.
Back. Wait, stop there. Okay. Just highlighting 4 areas. One is the group violence intervention program. How does technology work in that? I urge you to read this book if you haven't. Written by David Kennedy, he's a professor at John Jay College. We are in a relationship with John Jay and the National Network of State Communities. We know that much of the gun violence in South Bend and the cities across America are driven by less than 5% of the population. I think it's more like 1.5%, 2% at the most of the city. Usually young men who are engaged in groups. We avoid the word gangs only because, not to play semantics, but gangs has a connotation of a hierarchy, jump-ins, jump-outs, colors, certain initiations, and more organization, and often a national network, national affiliation. But we have a lot in South Bend. We have that too. We also have small groups of people who are geographically connected, just from the same hood, the same street, the same area, and they hang together, but they're involved in criminal enterprise. When you get a handful of young men involved in criminal enterprise, that's a group that needs our attention. So that's the group violence intervention. Well, how do you determine the groups? By the way, next slide, David Kennedy. And the guy who works with him out of Yale University is Andrew Christos. Andrew, as many of you understand how this works, is developing, for gun violence purposes, next slide, social network analysis. And that's an area that's ripe for study. How are we connected? It's kind of like the LinkedIn or the Facebook among people involved in criminal enterprise, particularly gun violence. What we did was we studied South Bend and determined who the groups are, who the group members are, brought up a full list of them, about 450. Looked and saw which ones were on paper, probation or parole, brought them into a meeting because we could leverage them to that meeting because of the conditions of their probation and parole, and had a face-to-face with them. We did their call. That was May 15th. Here we are 2 months later, and there hasn't been a murder in South Bend in that demographic. We've had one homicide, one murder since gun violence. A 55-year-old man shot a 55-year-old man. That's outside that demographic range for the call. And our shots fired and our person shot has plummeted since the call, using social network analysis. Secondly, real quick, slide 7.
Slide 7. Is it? Oops, sorry. Okay, we're gonna go this way.
All right, fine.
Slide 7?
You're just typing in the number and hitting enter.
I know. Stupid user trick on my part, I'm sure.
Okay, that's fine. You might have heard of ShotSpotter. If you haven't, it's a gun violence reduction technology. It's gunshot detection and location. We put acoustic sensors throughout the city, not throughout, in 3 square miles of the city, 7% of the city's geography. Where we've had about 50% of our homicides, about 38 to 40% of our gun violence, robberies, aggravated assaults. And in just that 3 square miles, we've had a lot of collection of data and evidence collection of casings, magazines, and guns. It hears the gunshots, and it gives us a location probably the size of this room. Well, historically, we depend upon you to call us, which we know that we only do about 20% of the time when there's gunfire, which means we lose 80% of the data. ShotSpotter gives us about 99%, and it filters out the false positives like fireworks and backfires. So we're being tactically sent to a call. We know exactly where we go geographically, not to 701 West Sample Street, the area of. We ring the doorbell and we do an outward spiral search. We go to the rear yard, because that's where ShotSpotter sends us. We get in there fast enough to save lives, fast enough to find recipient witnesses, getting on our hands and knees in the ice and snow in February and finding spent casings. And most importantly, because we know exactly where the shots were fired, we ring doorbells 4 or 5 houses each direction, and we talk to the people in the neighborhood, and we say, we're here because we care about you. Let's take a moment and let that absorb. If we didn't know about the gunfire, and we didn't before ShotSpotter, you thought we knew, because we give off an aura of omniscience. I've never met a cop in 38 years who says, yeah, we're not that bright. Have you? In fact, you watch those TV shows, especially that CSI stuff, and we look like we know it all. We solve the case in 30 minutes or 60 minutes, depending on the program. And you get to hear a cop get out in front of that and go, that's bullshit, we don't do that. Because we think that has deterrent value. So we let it ride. But imagine if you're from a neighborhood, particularly a neighborhood of color, Latino, African American, where there's disparate impact of incarceration. We look pretty good at locking up your husband, your boyfriend, your son, your father. We do that pretty well in those neighborhoods. And yet when you hit gunfire, you don't see a squad car. You think we know. And if you think we know about the gunfire and we don't come, what's your conclusion? We don't care. Now with ShotSpotter telling us about the gunfire, we respond. And we tell you that we're here because we care about you. That's changing the conversation in South Bend. Finally, 2 other things. 31.
Yeah, still not. Okay.
Something you should all be familiar with, we purchased a subscription to Leads Online. This directly impacts you. Go to their website, enter your valuables. Because you're putting all your valuables into your laptop is stolen. You come make a police report, it has your serial numbers and model numbers, and it's in my laptop. It's in the phone they stole. Put it in the cloud, put it on their website, it's secure. Because South Bend subscribes to Leads Online, you get that for free as a resident. And what's really neat for us is, particularly where the Common Council backed us with an ordinance change, Our pawn shops, our secondhand stores, our precious metal dealers, and our junk dealers are required to memorialize every transaction through this company that is the biggest in the nation. And they're particularly strong from Chicago across the northern part of Indiana, Michiana, so that when something is stolen, as was a house break recently where $40,000 in musical equipment was stolen, we recovered almost all the guitars involved, and they got pawned in Chicago. Some were pawned in Chicago. We got a hit on these online because it matched our entry. We traced it on the defendant who pawned in Chicago, did a search warrant at the house, found more evidence, and so forth and so on. We wouldn't have cracked that case. Had about 30 cases so far just since the spring. And now Mr. Walker's involved. We're trying to get the county involved, and Outback's looking at it. We're trying to spread this. It goes viral across this part of the country. So all your stolen stuff, out of your car, out of your backpacks, a robbery, when it gets pawned, as much as it does, we get notified. And lastly, 31. Let's go a couple more slides. I'm sorry, 33. I'll end with this, because I'm over my time. Automatic license plate readers. I could put a police officer with a clipboard and a pen and paper and have him stand or her stand on a street corner as cars go by and write down license plates. And if they were savant, they might memorize all the stolen auto registrations that they've heard at roll call over the past year. What we do is we have a database of stolen automobile registrations. Leads online takes a snapshot of thousands of license plates per hour as we drive up and down the streets of South Bend. It matches that against a database of stolen automobiles, and bing, when we get a hit. And we're covering stolen automobiles, and this year our stolen auto stats are down, and we only have one of these on a squad car. It also matches registrations for senior alerts, or silver alerts as they call them, or amber alerts when a child is kidnapped and at risk. And we're developing where we take our warrants, especially for high-risk felons, if they're attached to vehicles. So the Ron Teachman's wanted on a major crime, and he drives a 1993 Chevy Impala, Indiana registration such and such. We put that registration into our database, and the LPR will find it for us and alert us to that vehicle. So I'm sorry my time is brief, and I only had a chance to cover a couple of quick things. I'll stick around a few minutes, answer any questions, and then I'm going to run to that arson case. So thank you.
Yeah, some heavy stuff. There's some jobs I know I just couldn't do, and I think that one of the being a police officer is not a job I think I'd be well equipped to do. So thank you for you and everybody who serves. We did one audible today, and I'm inclined maybe to do another, so I'm going to look at my co-organizer and check. Maybe the folks who presented could make themselves just available for questions afterwards, and we could move to some of the hacking and some of the learning tracks. How does that sound? Or do we want to? Okay, we're gonna persevere with some Q&A. So I think we'll maybe about 10 minutes for some Q&A. Could we have the presenters, Fred Harris, Chief Teachman, Santi, Shuman? Yes. I'm missing somebody, I think. Yes, come on up. Say your question loud, because you don't have a microphone, and then we'll get to the right person. Yes, please.
I wanted to ask code enforcement. Is there, the contact in Chicago might have some information and some skills that they use and procedures that might help you. Have you talked to them?
Not yet, but certainly we'd like to. We can use, all the information and assistance that we can get. We're working with communities like Indianapolis to understand best practices, but certainly we're willing to talk to more folks. It's always helpful.
And I forgot Chris Whitaker's
Right
stall.
here, so you could ask him. This is great.
Sorry, I apologize, I lost track of the specific question. We'll make sure Shubita and Chris are definitely connected, though. Yeah, absolutely.
My question is for Santi and probably for enforcement as well. The Good Samaritan law, after we clean up, cut the grass, what have you, but, okay, we put a Band-Aid on the problem. How do we really stop it? How do we prevent it from happening again? And I ask this question because on the Warren Street, 4th Street area, this is something that I'm advocating for us to come together to clean up. But again, after cleaning up certain neighborhoods, it happens again. How do we resolve the problem?
So from our standpoint, one of the things that our team has been pushing for is looking for correlations and trying to make sure that when we engage in projects of the Smart Streets projects and the investment that's happening through Western and the Lincoln Way corridors and all these things, that some of those decisions of how we prioritize spending and the same in vacant and abandoned, making sure that those decisions are informed by data that comes from other departments. So using information about missed pickups from trash, using information from code enforcement violations to try to make sure that when we problem solve, we're using all of the available information. And traditionally in government, all of those things have been silent. Unfortunately, from a community standpoint, these type of violations are going to be recurrent, and that's kind of why you need constant partnership from the neighbors to make sure that you're always giving a hand. And sometimes it seems like you might be trying to dig a hole in the ocean, but
That's exactly what it is.
yeah, but hopefully you or other people that are good community partners incentivize and inspire another person that might be a little bit crazy like you at the beginning, that's trying to drive the process with good energy, and then hopefully it starts spiraling. From the city standpoint, we're trying to make sure that all of the projects and the initiatives that the mayor has put forth, that we're going at it from all angles, so trying to make sure that there's synergy. But Eldon.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question, Juan. He's our informal ambassador on the west side for code enforcement, so certainly appreciate all of the work that he's doing on our behalf. You know, we are getting tougher in terms of collections, and that will certainly help on the enforcement side. So as important as Good Samaritan is, and as you know, generous neighbors have been with maintaining vacant properties, we know that we have to do our part as well.
Well, I hope, I'm sorry, one more thing. I am going to be getting together with some of the council members and would welcome you guys to sit in, because this is something they really need to address. They always give me this line about they can only have so much power. Excuse the expression that Chief Teachman used, that bullshit. They have no power. I apologize. So, thankfully, that being tough, because I haven't noticed the changes, but you're right, it's just going to be a continued occurrence, and we'll continue to work together to try to resolve this. Thank you.
Yeah, the last thing that I would say is definitely keep working on, part of the intent of the event is keep working with the neighborhood associations, with the representatives in government. And we don't always get it right the first time, but there's a lot of goodwill in the city and a lot of willingness to learn from the residents and from other members of the community. So,
Question in the back, yeah?
Yep. Have you guys looked at maybe like a mobile app for doing code violation reporting? Has that been something in conversation?
Yeah, so Santi has created a mobile application that allows environmental violations to be cited in the field and resolved automatically.
yeah, so we've been working really hard and not stress hard enough and doing all of these projects. And again, sometimes it seems like you're charging against an insurmountable task, but we're trying to empower the city with technology to make sure that we record those violations, then allow those violations to be connected to the open data portal so that you guys can see what's happening in your neighborhoods, and you have live information. So hopefully the new tool comes, we've been piloting it, hopefully it comes on board across all of the inspector districts in the next couple of weeks. And then we have some really good technology coming on board that hopefully helps break the silence and helps the police department. We also have the open data on police crime reports. So if you go to the session, we'll show you where you can find that information.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks. There was a question over here on the left, I think.
My question is for Chief Teachman. You mentioned at the beginning of your talk about national gun registries and things like that. But there's obviously been interference from gun lobbyists, NRA, those kind of things.
United States Congress.
Is there anything stopping people from actually creating a voluntary registry nationally? Is there any legal restriction to stop at least the first step from happening?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's legally restricted from us.
I believe so. I'd be cautious about that, but if you want to see me in a few minutes,
Sure.
get my information, we can communicate on that further. The government is precluded. Whether you would have any liability individual, I can't speak to that without doing some research. But I can also tell you that the Congress has specifically defunded CDC from doing any of that work. So not only do we not have a registry, but the Center for Disease Control is precluded from doing any research on that issue.
Yes. So I said make them catch you. If that's something that excites you and you want to do that, right? Party up. What's the worst that can happen? You get caught and you have to stop. Like, right? So, yeah, do that. In the back.
So this is for SB staff, as well as a secondary question for Chris on the line here. We talked about environmental remediation and food violence reduction as a result of the community's capacity taking care of, remediating these properties. Have you guys did any observations on chronic disease and health quality of life? So think about self-repair in terms of your own body taking care of yourself. So are there any extrapolations you can make or any kind of research out there to say chronic disease as a result of the community taking charge of health as a result of better sensitive improvement taking care of themselves on the property?
Yeah, so in a city like South Bend, we're different from Chicago, not only inside, but our city government doesn't have all of the competencies that other governments have. Bigger cities tend to have incorporated functions that in our community are filled by the county. So food poisoning and health stuff usually is taken care of by the health department, which is a county agency. But this is where community has capacity comes, and the good work that you guys in Focus do of communicating and acting as bridges between the different stakeholders in the community. So that's why it's so important to have all of the people in this room, people who care and might not have technical skills, people that have technical skills and just don't know what type of problem they want to address, and definitely it's a holistic problem. I would imagine that if we overlaid the map of environmental violations, crime, and also incidents of chronically ill patients that tend to have to go to the doctor more than if they had preventive care or awareness of some of the tools that are available to them, those would overlay, I would imagine, pretty closely. So it's interesting when we end up spending as a community, to Chief Teachman's point, we address the symptoms in different ways, but we haven't been good about going at the root cause and knowing that there's dysfunctionalities as a community that we need to address it. It costs us money.
And really, I ask because I hope this is all inspirational for people to do that. I thank all you guys to just come up with the ideas as to what other trends you can observe to help you out to make these outcomes that we all want to see. Thank you.
We want to be respectful of the time of our speakers. Some of them have to get back to work or get to other things. I have a couple housekeeping things real quick, and then I'll pass it on to Dana. Jonathan Giels is here with the 100 Ideas Project, and he has some of that displayed out in the hall. So if anybody's interested in that in break or lunchtime, take a look at that and talk to Jonathan if you have questions. And Josh is giving me signals that I don't understand. Oh, Wi-Fi, AT&T Wi-Fi. If you need Wi-Fi, connect to AT&T Wi-Fi. That'll connect you without any password. Thank you, Josh. And there's a bunch of giveaways. There's some can koozies and stickers and buttons and things. So anything you see floating around in this room or the room out there that you're interested in, please grab it. I'll pass this on to Dan.
Thank you very much, everybody. Speakers, very much. Thank you again for sharing. Here's where I'm going to plead ignorance. A bunch of fantastic volunteers have been handling some of the logistics. I don't know where the rooms are that people are going to be hacking in. Everything's around, so you're going to go up here and you go down the hallway to the left. There's a couple computer labs for some of the training sessions if you want to learn a little bit more about the open data portal, how to use data.
There's a yellow sign on the door or outside of each of the rooms that says what's in there.
Fantastic.
They're also making doors to the room.
And then you just start pulling on doors. And then there's some classrooms available for folks that are interested in getting together and just starting to hack on different things. So again, it was safer, smarter homes, code for kids, and clean communities were kind of the three themes we were hoping to get people to organize around. The world is your oyster, but I'm going to encourage you to share some ideas, but kind of quickly try and take those ideas, a little bit of yes and get those ideas to the point where action is moving. Because 4 and 5 o'clock will roll around fairly quick, and hopefully at 4 we can have some demos of some different things. And at 5 o'clock we want to let people escape. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to, there's only one rule for the day. Do not talk. The only rule for the day, please, we've got a lot of food and drinks out there. 5 greatly, caffeine, but please no food or drinks in the computer lab. It's the only item policy we have to follow. It'll be my job.
Thanks, Dad.
And get off
So get on the one. And it's community as capacity is the theme. If we leave here without more community than we came in with, we have failed greatly. So I'm going to encourage you guys to actually just do this now. Stand up. Stand up. Up. Stand up, Blake. Find somebody you don't know, introduce yourself, share a little bit of information, then get your coffees down the hall. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.